Добрий день, друзі.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Welcome. Ukraine Media Center continues working for you. I'd like to remind you that we are supported by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. We are hosted by Skyloft Hotel. We'd like to thank them for that. And right now in our studio we have Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, spokesman of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Oleksandr, please tell us about the situation on the front lines at the moment. Thank you. Thank you, dear friends. I'm glad to welcome all of you, and I'd like to share with you information about wide-scale military aggression against Ukraine as of noon today. So the enemy continues to focus its efforts on preparations for an offensive operation in eastern Ukraine and taking control over the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, and creation of so-called ground corridor with the territory of temporarily occupied Autonomous Republic of Crimea, temporarily occupied by Russian Federation. At the moment, Russian Federation is completing creation of its assault group in eastern area of operation. The enemy continues conducting combat action in certain directions. The highest activity has been there in Slobozhanщина and Donetsk areas of operation, and in southern Bug areas of operation, enemy tries to improve its tactical situation. The enemy continues using rockets to hit Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. For example, on the 14th of April, two Russian strategic bombers, Tupolev 95/160, from airspace over Krasnodar, Krai of Russia, launched cruise missiles to Ukrainian territory. Also, for the first time ever since the beginning of this aggression, there has been bombing carried out by long-range Tupolev 22 M3 bombers, and that bombing was on the city of Mariupol. Briefly about the operational situation by areas. In Slobozhanщина area, Slobozhanщina direction, units of the 6th Army of the Western Military Unit and 14 Army Corps of Coast Guard of the Northern Fleet of Russian Federation are partially blocking city of Kharkiv and shelling it from artillery. The enemy's troops make attempts to break our defense in areas Izum, Slavyansk, and Izum, Barvinkovo. In Donetsk and Tavria areas, main efforts of enemy's units from so-called 1st and 2nd Army Corps, as well as 8th and 58th Army of the Southern Military District of Russia, are focused on taking towns of Popasna, Rubizhne, and city of Mariupol. We cannot exclude that the enemy will try to develop its offensive operation towards Severodonetsk, Slavyansk, and Volnovakha in order to create preconditions for surrounding and destroying the group of our troops. Russian occupiers continue aviation strikes against Mariupol, and they have used long-range Tupolev 22 M3 and Sukhoi 34 and Sukhoi 24M bombers. Ground units of enemy's ground forces carry out assault actions around seaport in Mariupol. In Tavria direction, the enemy improves its engineering fortifications, replenishing its weapons, ammunition, as well as fuel and lubricants, without any active combat operations. In southern Bug area, units of the 8th and 49th Army and 22nd Army Corps of the enemy fire our troops' positions, restore their battle capacity, replenish their ammunition, and conduct engineering fortification of their positions. In certain directions, the aggressor tries to improve its tactical position, in particular around the town of Oleksandrivka, which is 30 kilometers to the west from Kherson. In Volyn, Polisa, and Siversk directions, units of the armed forces of the Republic of Belarus continue implementing assignments on strengthening the Ukraine-Belarus border in Brest and Gomel oblasts. there is still a probability of rocket and aviation strikes by occupants against military and civilian infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. Also, the enemy is finishing rearranging units of its central military district, namely 2nd Army and the 90th Tank Division. Those units are being moved from Bryansk Oblast and Kursk Oblast to certain areas of concentration in Belgorod and Voronezh Oblast. In the future, it's expected that they may be moved to Donetsk area of operations. In Black Sea and Azov areas of operations, groups of enemy ships in Black Sea and Sea of Azov continue implementing assignments about isolating the combat area, reconnaissance and fire support in coast area. And taking into account the presence of 3 caliber cruise missiles carriers, there is still a possibility of using rockets against the territory of Ukraine by the enemy. According to the information by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the enemy's plan to mobilize 26,000 of reservists in certain districts of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast to Russian Federation's ground forces has actually failed. Males aged 18 to 65 make every attempt to avoid mobilization because they don't want to become cannon fodder for the occupier's army. According to their previous plans, the enemy had to create 17 infantry regiments in combined armies of southern and western military districts, but this task has not been implemented. The personnel which they managed to get is not trained or instructed in any way, and also that personnel is provided with ammunition and weapons which cannot be actually used. Russian servicemen who carry out that so-called recruiting promised that such conscripts will only be involved in controlling the occupied territories, guarding roads and military facilities, and improving the defense positions. Still, as practical experience shows, such mobilized people from Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast are first priority reserve to replenish losses of those units who are directly engaged in combat action against Ukraine. Also, those people as the least valuable resource are used for combat reconnaissance to find positions of Ukrainian defenders. A couple of words about illegal activities of Russian occupiers. Unfortunately, forceful transportation of civilians from occupied towns and villages of Ukraine into Russian Federation continues. Also, the property stolen, valuable property stolen from Ukraine is being transported there. Russian secret services are actively looking for collaborators to destabilize situation in our country and to receive information about Ukrainian military, law enforcement, and patriotic citizens. And finally, dear friends, I will announce the total losses incurred by Russian occupiers from the 24th of February until today, until the 15th of April. So, by now, the Russian army in Ukraine has already lost about 20,000 people, soldiers and officers who have been killed. They have lost 756 tanks, 1,976 armored fighting vehicles, 366 artillery systems, 122 multiple launch rocket systems, 66 air defense systems, 163 aircraft have been downed, as well as 144 helicopters, 1,443 cars and trucks, 8 ships and boats. Russians have also lost 25 UAVs of tactical level and 4 mobile launch units for tactical ballistic missiles. That's it. Thank you for attention. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. Dear colleagues, you're welcome to ask your questions, but please introduce yourself.
Alexander, hi, it's Luke Harding from the Guardian newspaper. Everyone is talking about the last part of your list, the sinking of the Russian warship cruiser Moskva. Can you tell us a little bit about how Ukraine managed to locate and destroy the cruiser, and whether it's true, as the Russian Ministry of Defense says, that it sank when it was being towed back into port? And just another question on that. There are different reports as to how many Russian sailors were killed. Some reports say 500 died, 50 were rescued. Do you have any figures on what happened to the Moskva's crew after it was hit by a Ukrainian missile? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. This is a very important, very relevant question. At the same time, I will not be able to provide you with any additional information other than, other than that information already announced by General Staff and the Southern Theater Command of Ukrainian Armed Forces. At the moment, I have nothing to add. And dear friends, you have to understand that the combat operations are usually not to be discussed in public, so please understand it properly. Please understand it. Any more questions?
Hello, my name is Eli Kasoli, Sky TV in Greece. I want to ask you about if you think that the Russian will, let's say, escalate the attack by using weapons like of mass destruction, or let's say even nuclear weapons, as they have already threatened, and if the army, the Ukrainian army, is ready for this.
Thank you for your question. Well, you have to understand that nuclear weapons are so-called last resort of the Russian Federation. At the moment, we don't see any signs that Russia would probably use these weapons. We don't have, our intelligence does not have such information, and also our foreign partners and foreign intelligence services with whom we cooperate and exchange information at the moment do not confirm it. But in any circumstances, we should be ready for any developments in this situation, including possibly such very negative developments. As of now, we don't forecast it. We don't expect it. Thank you. Thank you. Raki Mujiri, Georgian Formula TV channel.
Do you have any news from Mariupol after reunion of Marines and Azov? Is there any breakout? Is there any success after this reunion? And maybe something else you can tell us about Mariupol? Thanks.
Thank you. Joining of Marines, those two units of Marines and Azov, has been a bright tactical success. The situation in Mariupol is difficult. Battle continues. The Russian army all the time engages new units to storm this, to assault on that city. Now there is an active combat action around Ilyich factory and in Mariupol port area, but the Russians have not managed as yet to fully take control of the city. Believe us, Ukrainian armed forces will do everything possible in order to deblock, to remove siege of that city, but as of now, unfortunately, I cannot tell you anything else. You're welcome.
Moscow down have any influence on the situation in Mariupol?
You know what? This is a rhetorical question. Any loss incurred by the Russian army may, of course, definitely positively impact Ukrainian defense. No doubt. Loss of the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation is an important loss for Russian Federation, and no doubt that at least their forces in the Black Sea area have weakened quite a bit. So, to say how it will or will not affect, of course, for us, any and every loss incurred by Russian Federation in any circumstances, whether it's caused by Ukrainian armed forces or they incur that loss because of their neglect or whatever, in any circumstances, it's always positive for our defense operation which Ukraine is carrying out in its territory. Thank you. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Vishnu Shom, New Delhi Television, India. My question, sir, is this. Could you give us an idea of the extent of the damage sustained at the plant outside Kyiv, which was apparently attacked by Russian caliber missiles? Firstly, were they Russian caliber missiles? And was this some sort of a successful strike? What was the damage?
Thank you for your question. I understand your question, but I'm not authorized to comment with this information. You can try and approach for comments the military administration of Kyiv City, but also there they will. It's too early also for them to provide this sort of information. Thank you.
Thanks. Alexander, look, just to try and clarify on the Moskva, did Ukraine sink the Moskva?
I already answered this question and I have nothing to add. Please understand me. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksandr. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, dear friends. And thank you for providing us this important information. Friends, please monitor our announcement.